Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, A Good Listen, where I sit here and tell you about a recent Audible book that I've listened to in story format, and I reveal that book that I got today's story from at the end of this video. So if you're a fan of horror, thriller, or mystery novels, or you just like listening to good stories told in those genres, well then you come to the right channel, because that's all I'll be doing, and I'll be posting once or twice a month. So without further ado, let's get into today's story. If you're a fan of the Winchester House out here in San Jose, California, then you're really going to enjoy today's story, because today's story is very reminiscent of the Winchester House. So, Remy is a tour guide, and she hosts tours at the state's most haunted hotel. She's been doing this for about 2 years, and she does it once a week. Now, during these tours, Remy gives the backstory of how the Carroll Hotel became the most haunted hotel in the state. And the story goes something like this. Back in the 1900s, there was a respectable physician named John and his wife Mary, and they were looking to start a new business venture. And at that time, health retreats were like the big rage, the thing that everybody was getting into. And so naturally, John and Mary hopped on that bandwagon. But unfortunately, by the time that they actually got their health retreat up and running, the hype around health retreats was dwindling down. So unfortunately for them, when they opened up their health retreat to the public, it wasn't successful. Unluckily, or luckily for them, however you want to see it, a fire broke out in their health retreat, and it destroyed their building, but they were able to file an insurance claim. They ended up getting a substantial amount of money from their insurance company, and they ended up rebuilding their business. But instead of it being a health retreat, they built it into a hotel, which they named the Carroll Hotel. Now, again, if you're familiar with Northern California, primarily San Francisco, then the Carroll Hotel itself is very reminiscent of Alcatraz. Alcatraz is a large prison that's sitting on its own little island, and it's surrounded by water on 3 points, kind of just secluded to its own location. The Carroll Hotel is very similar to that, where it's sitting on its own island. It's surrounded by water in 3 different points, and the only way you can access the Carroll Hotel is by driving over this really unsteady bridge that's going over this water, and the nearest civilization is about an hour away. So it's very remote. However, even though it has a remote location, it is very successful, and it has a very upscale clientele. Unfortunately for John and Mary, in their haste to get their business going and up and running, they didn't do their due diligence in background checks on their employees. If they had, then they would have noticed that their gardener that they hired, Edgar, had actually recently been tried and acquitted due to lack of evidence for his wife's murder. They didn't know that, so they hired him anyway. Again, their business is successful. It's been like that for a couple of years, but then another fire breaks out in the Carroll Hotel. And the employees and residents alike, they actually witnessed John and Mary escaping from the hotel to safety. But the next day when they came in, the structure of the hotel was still there. There was definitely damage from the fire. And when the employees came back to start work the next day, they found a note on the door saying that the Carroll Hotel was closed for a couple of months during the renovation process. So a couple of months passed, and John reopens the Carroll Hotel. There's a huge crowd surrounding the Carroll Hotel. People have been waiting, anticipating the grand opening for this hotel. But as the crowd is surrounding John and kind of listening to his grand speech about how the hotel is now open, they are noticing some differences. The first difference that they notice is with John himself. John looks different. The biggest thing of note that is different from John from a couple of months ago is that John is a whole inch taller than what he was. Also, they noticed that Mary is not alongside John. And John kind of reading the room about, how people are just looking and the whispers and everybody kind of looking at one another. He's reading the room, and so he offers up an explanation. He tells the crowd that unfortunately during the past couple of months, Mary passed away. And so that's why she's not here. And he himself is going to be running the Carroll Hotel by himself. The last thing that they noticed is that the staff was different. John had fired all of his previous staff, the staff that worked at the Carroll Hotel before the fire broke out. He fired all those individuals and hired on new staff. And if you haven't caught on, John is actually not John. John is Edgar. You see, the word is, or the whisper's word, that when John and Mary escaped, Edgar took advantage of that opportunity and actually murdered both of them. And John and Edgar actually looked very much alike, except for Edgar was a bit taller than John, but they looked very much alike. And so it's assumed that Edgar took on John's identity in order to take over his business. So at this point in the story, John is not John, John is Edgar. And I'm going to refer to John as Edgar at this point in the story because that's who he is, and just to keep confusion down. So now Edgar is running the business, and the business continues to be successful. And everybody kind of just powers on. Nobody really questions anything, at least out loud. They question things amongst themselves, but not out loud to where Edgar hears about it. And the business continues to be successful. But there is something that's strange that starts to happen at the Carroll Hotel now that Edgar is in charge and has been running the business. You see, employees and guests alike have started coming up missing. And again, the whispers are circulating because people are confused, like what is happening to the staff, but nobody really knows. Everybody's speculating stuff, but nobody really knows. Until one day, an employee goes down to the basement, and out of the shadows of the basement, Edgar comes out with a knife and tries to kill this employee. This employee is able to escape, but when she escapes, she's left with a big old gash across her chest. She ends up making it all the way to the police station. She reports this, but again, rumors started circulating around this Carroll Hotel and around the town near the police station. And so somehow the townspeople made it to the Carroll Hotel before the police could get there. So the town people have made it to the Carroll Hotel. They find Edgar, they gather him up, and they actually throw a rope over a beam, and they end up hanging Edgar. And so by the time the police got there, Edgar is already deceased. However, the police still goes ahead and does an investigation, and they actually go down to that basement where Edgar was. And when they go down to that basement, they find over 20 corpses underneath the grounds. Now, it is speculated that Edgar definitely killed more than 20 people. However, there was no proof of that. So this is the backstory that Remy tells her group while she's giving them a tour of the Carroll Hotel. Now, it's during one of these tours that she has an individual in her group named Mark. Mark is a wealthy web designer, and he is a paranormal enthusiast. And so he is very impressed by the way Remy is delivering the story, her enthusiasm of telling the story, and how she is just a wealth of knowledge about the Carroll Hotel. And he needs that because Mark actually has something up his sleeve. He has something that he wants to do. And what he wants to do is he actually wants to rent the Carroll Hotel and stay there for a couple of weeks. And he needs somebody like Remy to help him with backstories and back information. And so he approaches Remy after the tour, and he presents her with the opportunity, asking her if she would be willing to stay with him at the Carroll Hotel for several weeks, and he would pay her handsomely. So Remy is very apprehensive. She doesn't know this man from a can of paint, and she's just like, no. But she starts thinking about it. She considers it because Remy, although she is a tour guide at the Carroll Hotel, she's also a paranormal enthusiast herself. And she has, the whole time that she's been doing tours at the Carroll Hotel, she has seen images that people have captured of ghosts and spirits. She has heard the numerous amount of claims people have made of things that they heard, seen, felt in the Carroll Hotel. But the whole 2 years that she's been running these tours, she's never experienced those things for herself. And so she's very intrigued. So her curiosity gets the best of her. And although she doesn't know Mark, she actually accepts his proposal. She accepts the opportunity. But it wasn't going to just be Mark and her staying at the Carroll Hotel by themselves. It was actually a group that Mark had put together, and that all these individuals were going to be staying at the Carroll Hotel. This group contained a medium, her butler, the owner of the house, which is a 16-year-old girl, her guardian, Remy and Mark, and a couple of other individuals, and they number 8 in total. So these 8 individuals meet at the Carroll Hotel, and the first day is kind of uneventful. Neither one of them really know each other, so they kind of get the pleasantries out the way. They introduce themselves, they state why they're there, they kind of give a little back history about one another. They eat, they find where they're going to sleep, and they go in and they kind of just, get their stuff together to stay at this hotel for several weeks. So that is the end of the first day. Again, nothing of note happens the first day. But that night, however, something of note does happen. So it's about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Remy's laying in her bed. She gets up, she opens the window, she goes back in her bed, and she is desperately begging to go to sleep. She is so tired and she wants to go to sleep, but for some reason she can't. So she's laying there and she's, again, begging to go to sleep, and out of nowhere, her door slowly begins to open. She looks over and she's like, what the heck? But she instantly just justifies her door opening slowly by itself to the window being open. Although there wasn't a lot of wind blowing through her window, she still equates her door opening to her window being open. So she gets up, she closes the door, she gets back in bed, and she starts to, again, desperately beg to go to sleep because she can't. Now, while she's laying in bed, she starts to hear footsteps, and she hears the footsteps kind of further down the hallway from her room. So she hears footsteps coming closer and closer and closer and closer to her room door. She hears the footsteps go by her room door, and then she actually hears the footsteps past her room door. And as the footsteps are walking away from her room door, her bedroom door slowly opens up again. Now Remy is scared, but she's intrigued because this is what she's here for. She wants to experience what everybody has been proclaiming that they felt, saw, and heard in the Carroll Hotel. So she gets up and she goes to her door. She looks out the door. Out the door is a long hallway and it's pitch black out there. But as she looks out her door, she actually gets a glimpse of a piece of white fabric that kind of passes by the corner. So she sees it as it's going right past the corner, and she's like, what is that? So she goes out her room and she makes her way down the hallway and she hits that corner. Now that corner, it actually leads down to a stairway that leads down to a foyer. So she goes down the stairs, slowly making her way down the stairs, and she hits the foyer. And when she gets to the foyer, she's actually just stunned and just kind of doesn't know what to do because of what she's seeing. She sees the medium. She's dressed in a white nightgown. Her hair is down. She has long gray hair, and her eyes are completely white, like they are rolled in the back of her head. And the medium is just kind of walking around slowly, like she's in a trance, just walking around the foyer. And so Remy, kind of scared, stunned, doesn't really know what to do. She gathers herself and she makes her way down to the medium, and she reaches out because she's about to touch the medium. But as she reaches out to touch the medium, she feels a pressure on her shoulder and it pulls her back. Remy is terrified, but she turns around and she sees what just pulled her. And to her surprise, it's not a ghost or a spirit or anything like that. It's actually the medium's butler. And he stopped her right before she was about to touch the medium. And he tells her, he is adamant that she does not touch this woman. He tells her, do not touch her at all. Remy is asking him, like, why is her eyes all white and why is she walking like that? She's just confused. She doesn't understand what's going on. And he tells her that she's sleepwalking. And Remy asks him, does she do this very often? And he says, every night. And she goes, well, it's not safe for her to be down here by herself. Like, we have to get her to the room. He's like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And so he pulls out these bells. It's like little bells that's on like this rope or string. And he rings the bells. Now, this doesn't get the medium out of her trance. She's still in this trance-like state, but for some reason, she seems like she's attracted to the sounds of the bells. So he's ringing the bells, and she starts to follow the sound of the bells. And as he's ringing the bells, he slowly makes his way up the stairs, and she's slowly still following him. Her eyes are still white. She's still in this trance-like state, but she still slowly follows him. He ends up leading her all the way up the stairs and back into the room. Remy hears the door close and she knows that they're in the room. So Remy goes back up to her room, and although she's still shaken up from this event, she ends up falling asleep. The next day, she wakes up. They do discuss this event that happened last night with the medium being in this trance-like state. And the butler and the medium kind of describe it or talk about it like as if it's not a big deal. I mean, she is a medium, so it's not that far-fetched that she would actually be affected by spirits in the house if they're in there, because she's a medium. So it's not anything new to them or concerning to them. They just failed to tell the rest of the group that this is something that happens to her often than not. So they kind of just brush everything of it under the rug, and they continue on with their stay at the Carroll Hotel. Now, of course, days go by and more creepy stuff is starting to happen throughout the house. But the next thing that is of note to talk about is that they actually have 2 seances during their stay at the Carroll Hotel. So the first seance that they found this room. All 8 of them go into this room. They sit around this large table. They're holding hands. The medium's at the head of the table, and she ends up making contact with this lingering spirit. And she's asking the spirit questions. She's having this whole interaction with the spirit. And out of nowhere, like, the spirit disappears. She just goes away. And so the medium is kind of upset with the group because she laid out specific rules and instructions before she made contact with the spirit that she told them that they had to follow to the T. And so she is under the impression that the reason why she lost contact with this spirit is because one of them did something. And the rest of the group is like, no, we didn't do anything. We followed your instructions to the T. So nobody really knows why the connection was broken. Anyways, they keep on going. They go throughout their day, and then they have a second seance sometime later. During the second seance, they do the same thing. They go in the same room. All 8 of them sit around the table. They hold hands. The medium's at the head of the table, and she ends up making contact with the spirit. But not just any spirit. She makes contact with Edgar, the gardener from earlier in the story, who was acquitted for his wife's murder, and who also was assumed to have killed John and Mary, and the same guy that tried to kill that employee down in the basement. She makes contact with him. After she makes contact with him, all hell breaks out in this house. So much stuff starts to happen. The creepy, scary, haunting things just heighten up, and it's just one after another after another. It's kind of like they're always constantly on alert. They can't get a break. And it gets so bad to the point where they actually are feeling like their lives are in danger. They get so on edge after she makes contact with Edgar. And the creepy stuff that happens in this house just escalates to a point where they actually have to stay together as a group. They are too scared to be separated from each other in this group. So they start doing head counts with everybody, making sure that everybody in their group is there. And one day when Remy does a head count for everybody in their group, she notices that Mark is not in the group. And Remy starts asking everybody, like, where's Mark? When's the last time you seen Mark? Where's Mark? And nobody knows where Mark is. So Remy's like, we have to find Mark. Everybody stay here in this room, and I'm going to go find Mark. So she gets a flashlight, and she goes throughout the house, and she's looking for Mark in all the common places where everybody's been. And she can't find him. And right out of the corner of her eye, she notices something. Right up in the ceiling where the cutout is for the attic, she noticed that the attic stairs are pulled down. This is very strange because out of the 2 years that Remy has been doing tours at this house, nobody has ever gone up to the attic. And even prior to that, nobody has ever gone up to the attic. It's just too dangerous. It's too unsteady up there. Nobody goes up there. So she's wondering, like, one, how did the attic stairs get down? And why are the attic stairs get down? But most of all, she's really wondering, like, if Mark went up to the attic, why did he go up to the attic? Like, that is just such a strange place to go. So she decides to go to the attic because there's no other place that she found Mark. So he has to be up in the attic. So she marches up the attic stairs. She goes up to the attic. She points her flashlight around the attic. The attic is full of like old furniture and stuff. And she's calling out for Mark. She's like, Mark, Mark, where are you? Are you up here, Mark? And as she's calling out, she stops in her tracks because she hears a noise. And she turns around and she looks at this armoire. You know, like it's a piece of furniture that you can actually hang up your clothes. In the Carroll Hotel, every room has this particular armoire furniture in there. And this armoire, if you open the door, it has a back. And it has kind of like a secret back where if you remove the back of the armoire, it's actually like a little space back there that a normal size adult, I don't know what normal is, but a normal size adult, if they're like in the fetal position, can fit in this space. So this is the armoire that she sees. So the armoire, the doors are closed, but the doors are rattling. And so this is what stopped her. And this was what kind of got her scared. And so she's looking at the doors rattling and she's just wondering. Now, she's not wondering or scared because, you know, she thinks there's a spirit or something in there doing something. It's not that. In her mind, because nobody has been up here, she is under the impression that there must be like an animal or a rodent in here. So that's what she's scared of. She's like, what animal or rodent is about to pop out this thing? So the doors are rattling and rattling, and she's kind of anticipating this door to just open up at some point. But it doesn't. It just stops. So she still has her flashlight fixated on this armoire, and she's waiting. She's kind of just stuck in this state of shock and fear. So she is holding her flashlight at this armoire, and all of a sudden the doors just bust open, and that secret back just pops off, and all this stuff, white stuff, just starts to spray out all over her. She immediately drops her flashlight, she drops it to the ground, and she covers her head to protect herself. And this goes on for a couple of seconds. Once all the white objects that just started shooting out of the back of this armoire stopped, she kind of slowly got up. And right when she kind of sat up, she looks at the ground because this white ball just rolls out the back of this armoire and it actually rolls into the rays of her flashlight. So as it rolls into the rays of her flashlight, she's watching it. And once it stops and she actually realizes what it is, Remy screams to the top of her lung. And if you want to know what that white ball was that she saw, what those white objects were that sprayed out of the back of that armoire, and the hell that Edgar puts this group through from start to finish in this book, then I highly, highly encourage you guys to listen to The Carroll Haunt by Dossie Coates. It's a really, really good story. I listen to that story, not just to cover it on this channel, but I've listened to that story more than 5 times from start to finish. I really, really enjoy that story. I really, really like that story. I highly encourage you guys to listen to this story anywhere that you can listen to audiobooks or actually read the physical book, because it's a really good book, you guys. And I know that if you're like me, you're going to enjoy it from start to finish. All right, you guys, I hope I provided you with just a little bit more details than you would receive on audio description or even on a physical copy, like the back of the book. And I hope that I provided you with enough detail to entice you to actually read this story in its entirety, because you will enjoy it. If you enjoyed today's story, then I highly encourage you guys to like, comment, and subscribe down below. If you guys want to follow me on any of my social media platforms other than YouTube, then please look down in the description box below, because all my social media handles are there. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.